Thank you for coming to the screening of Artificial. I'm Mohamed Okeri. I'm a programmer with Cinema Politica. And thanks for coming for the screening, followed with a question and answer with Marie-Josée Béliveau and Grant Vandenberg. Pierre Jennings, who was supposed to be here today as well, had to cancel last minute, so he will not be available. I'll start by introducing Marie-Josée, who is a nature and food campaigner at Greenpeace Canada. Marie-Josée is passionate about alternatives for greening life and living according to our values. Ethnogeographer, ecologist, and proud of her roots, she is keen to weave links between environmental issues and indigenous issues. She has worked in Latin America and maintains her solidarity with the indigenous people of this region. In 2018, she traveled through the Amazon to document the realities of the protectors of the forest, and she organizes conferences about the vision and initiative of the people of the Amazon. In Canada, she has been fighting against the tar sands industry and the transportation projects. She is co-founder of the Marche pour la Terre-Mer, the foundation Corps per Chaise Nue, and the Wall of Women Against Tar Sands and Pipelines. And our second guest is Grant Vandenberg. Raised on the family farm in southern Ontario, Grant has a background in agriculture and animal physiology. He has educated at the University of Guelph, receiving his Bachelor's of Science in Animal Science and a Master's in Fish Physiology and Aquaculture. After a stay in the United States, he moved to Quebec City and obtained a doctoral at Laval University in 2001, specializing in fish nutrition. In 2000, he co-founded Pero Systems Technologies, Inc., which was active in the fields of aquaculture biotechnology, and for which he was head of scientific affairs until 2010. In 2003, Grant became the NSERC Industrial Research Chair in Sustainable Aquaculture Development at Department of Animal and Science at Laval University. His research activities focus on nutritional approaches to minimize the environmental impact of fish production, as well as the technology development related to the health, production, and physiology of aquatic animals. For the past 5 years, his laboratory has been working to develop the use of insect larvae to fight against food waste as an alternative approach to recovering organic waste and to develop innovative and high-level ingredients for the agriculture food sector. Thank you guys for being here with us. And maybe we can start with just getting a bit of kind of reactions from this epic film we've just watched and the kind of intersections of all the issues that were raised, as well as how really it affects us in Canada, and especially that both of the work that you have been doing kind of centers a lot of these issues in our context. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, hi. I'm sorry, I'm English is not my first language, and I don't. I speak in French. I'm sorry. Donc oui, alors premièrement, à propos du film, moi j'ai vraiment beaucoup apprécié. Comment je pourrais dire? Tout d'abord, je ne sais pas si vous avez remarqué, peut-être vous savez déjà tous, là, mais que ça a été produit par Patagonia, qui est une entreprise qui fait des manteaux, entre autres, des vêtements pour le plein air. Donc, je trouve ça intéressant que ce soit une entreprise qui réalise un film de cette ampleur-là sur la question du saumon, puis aussi, en fait, en général, plus largement, des poissons, le lien avec les rivières, la question du poisson sauvage et tout ça, et OGM, en fait pas OGM, mais plus le poisson d'élevage. Donc, j'ai fait un peu de recherche sur le propriétaire de Patagonia, puis sur l'entreprise en général qui fait plusieurs... en fait, le propriétaire est un passionné de pêche, donc je pense que c'est une des raisons pour laquelle il a réalisé un film comme ça. On le voit apparaître aussi dans le film.
Maybe
moi,
we
oui.
can give a chance to translate a
oui.
little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Just split it up.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Firstly, Marie-Josée was reflecting on the fact that the film was produced by Patagonia, which is a corporation, and just how interesting it is that a corporation would decide to fund a film of such great proportions about wild fish, and that she did some research about the owner of Patagonia, who is really passionate about fishing, and how that plays into the decision of funding the film.
En fait, je voulais juste prendre ça comme exemple pour montrer que à tous les niveaux dans notre société, les gens peuvent faire des changements. Donc, par exemple, là, c'est une entreprise qui peut s'investir pour les questions environnementales. Voilà. Puis, sinon, je ne sais pas si vous voulez... OK. Sinon, sur la question comment nous... En fait, moi, je suis ici pour Vigilance OGM et comme chargée de campagne à Greenpeace Canada sur les questions d'alimentation et nature. Donc, c'est sûr que la question du saumon, autant les écloseries que la question du saumon OGM, ce sont des questions qui nous interpellent. Dans le film, j'ai trouvé vraiment intéressant cette espèce de... En fait, quand, par exemple, il y a un intervenant qui dit, je ne me rappelle plus qui c'était, là, mais qui dit qu'en fait, on ne peut pas reproduire les écosystèmes. Et pourtant, c'est ce qu'on est en train d'essayer de faire. Un des problèmes qu'on a, c'est, comment je pourrais dire, on a vraiment, je ne sais pas si vous voulez traduire, je parle beaucoup.
A first point that Marie-Josée was raising, that it's interesting how at all levels of society we can try to invest ourselves to make change at whatever level we are capable of. And she was saying how relevant the question of salmon, and specifically GMO salmon, which is less addressed in the film, as the film focuses more on fish hatcheries, hatcheries and fish farms, but it's really central to the work of Greenpeace and Vigilance OGM that Marie-Josée is part of.
Donc, c'est ça. Donc, j'étais en train de dire, en fait, que la question du poisson ici, comme on le voit, mais ça peut être aussi la question de la viande, des élevages de viande, par exemple. On consomme énormément au niveau mondial ou dans certaines régions, comme ici, on parlait plus spécifiquement de cette région-là, où il y a beaucoup de ces régions-là où il y a beaucoup de pêche qui se fait. Et il y a aussi toute la question des barrages et tout ça, mais on a affecté énormément l'environnement, puis en fait, tout ce qu'on essaie de faire, c'est de patcher les problèmes, donc en recréant des écosystèmes ou en recréant des poissons, sans respecter en fait les lois de la nature, qui sont quand même quelque chose de fondamental. Donc, on nous ramenait souvent dans le film avec des histoires, comment je pourrais dire, des légendes autochtones qui nous rappellent en fait le lien qu'on a avec la nature et qu'on oublie rapidement, puis qu'on pense en fait qu'on n'est plus, en tant qu'humain, on est comme au-dessus de ces lois-là et qu'on peut les reproduire.
And there's also kind of the central point in the film that we cannot rebuild ecosystems that we have destroyed. And Marie-Josée is also drawing a parallel between the fishing industry and also the meat industry, other cases in which humans have had a very disastrous effect on nature, and then try to patch up that problem with industrial solutions, which clearly does not work. And there's also, we are kind of reminded of the fact that we believe that we are above nature and able to fix problems with humanly engineered solutions, when the film focuses on indigenous stories and indigenous cultural beliefs that we really go hand in hand. There's a kind of relation of interdependence between us and nature, which a lot of humans, especially in the West and colonial states, tend to forget about.
Thanks very much. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. I have to say, I'm not a fisheries biologist. I'm an animal physiologist. I'm an animal nutritionist, in fact. So this is a little bit far from my expertise, and I'm a little bit hesitant to make any grand statements on this. One thing I think that is very clear is that this whole situation is very complicated. And as human beings, we tend to want to look for simple solutions in situations that are extremely complicated. When we're looking at extremely complicated ecosystems in the Northwest in particular, where this all started, in my opinion, is that we started to dam up the river systems up there for electricity. You know, they were looking to populate the Northwest, the West in general, and this was a very convenient way to generate electricity and also provide water for agricultural systems. And they alluded to that to a very small extent, but if anybody has ever flown over Idaho and central Oregon in Washington, anything that's green there is usually a round circle by a center pivot or irrigation system, and there's huge conflicts for water resources, and they alluded to that in the piece here earlier when they had all kinds of disease issues. So in my opinion, again, this damming of rivers has caused a lot of ecological problems, but also led to policies around developing hatcheries. You know, again, thinking that it's very simple. If we put more fish in, we're going to get more fish out. And that's obviously not the case. We're learning an awful lot about how the selection of these lines in the hatcheries generally will depress the fitness of the fish when they're left out in the wild. And then they go out to sea and they come back. The other thing that's not really discussed here is the whole implication of the commercial fisheries industry, because a lot of these hatcheries all up the West Coast, up through Alaska as well, are very much there to support commercial fishery industry. So before those salmon come back to the rivers, as we saw here, before they even get there, most of those fish are taken by very large factory boats that are very efficient at extracting fish from the oceans, and that has a huge impact as well on returning numbers. Again, the other thing is it comes back to habitat loss, and what I found compelling was when they talked about the Mount St. Helens case study. Within 3 or 4 years, they had huge returns of salmon and steelhead, and it shows the fact that if you leave those fish alone, they're gonna do well. And you know, as human beings, again, we're looking for simple solutions in a complex system, and what they did, they came back and started stocking fish again. So you know, we're putting in fish that are less fit. We are also having impacts. We're learning a lot more on the genetic side of not only what happens to as a result of selecting fish, either intentionally or non-intentionally, but also there's an impact of what we call epigenetics. So impacts of the environment, maybe the feed that they're receiving, the water quality within the hatcheries, and these have profound effects on the way that the genes are expressed. So there may be components that silence some genes or turn on other genes that normally would not happen in the natural environment. But these have effects that can be passed from generation to generation as well, these epigenetic marks on the genome. And we're only starting to understand that right now. So again, complicated. The other thing is, I agree, Mother Nature, she's a bitch, and she always wins. So that's one thing I've seen over and over again in my relatively short career as a scientist. And the person at the very beginning said it very well. We try to engineer solutions and control everything and in a very complex world. And it doesn't really serve us very well, I find. They gave examples of taking dams out, and I think that's going on across the Northwest more and more. You hear about this. The reality is, though, is that does have an impact on power generation. Obviously, there are more alternatives that are more and more available and being used. But the reality is, and I mean, look, Quebec is a big proponent of hydroelectricity, and it serves us fairly well. If you look at hydroelectricity versus generation of electricity using coal or even natural gas, I think it in the short term serves the society fairly well. There's a cost, though, and we see that in terms of the destruction of natural ecosystems. It's a societal question, and it's not an easy. There's no easy answers there.
En fait, personnellement, ce que je constate, c'est avec des technologies comme celle-là, en fait, on essaie d'arrimer la nature à nos besoins. Alors qu'en fait, c'est le contraire qu'il faut qu'on fasse, c'est que l'humain doit s'arrimer à la nature, arrimer ses besoins à la nature. Donc, inverser cette logique-là qu'on ne fait pas facilement. Je regardais la semaine dernière, il y a la Chambre de commerce du Montréal métropolitain qui a relancé un projet qui est sur les tablettes, en tout cas, qui a relancé un projet de port à Contrecœur pour améliorer le commerce parce que présentement, avec le port à Montréal, il n'y arrive pas qu'ils disent à l'exportation de la marchandise et tout ça. Donc, ça sera un nouveau port dont on aurait besoin, mais à Contrecœur, ça se trouve dans un endroit qui est très important pour une espèce du Canada, qui est le chevalier cuivré. Donc, une espèce de poisson importante qu'on retrouve juste au Canada, au Québec, en fait. Alors, encore là, on sacrifie une espèce pour du commerce. Alors, on voit que c'est possible d'inverser cette tendance-là. Quand on regarde, par exemple, dans le film, la destruction de barrages pour redonner les droits à la nature, et en fait, c'est pas juste pour redonner les droits à la nature, c'est à l'humain qui est à l'intérieur de nous aussi, qui vit dans cette nature-là. Donc, on voit qu'il y a des possibilités de retour en arrière quand on se donne vraiment la peine, et il y a des possibilités aussi de quitter cette logique-là. Alors, donc, moi, je pense que c'est une des solutions importantes dans cette espèce d'opposition technologie et nature. Commerce aussi, en fait, commerce, capitalisme, tout ça, et nature. Donc, voilà, je vais vous traduire.
What Marie-Josée is saying is that solutions need to acknowledge the fact that as humans we have a sort of, or in our Western context, we have this belief that we can adapt nature to our own needs, whereas actually we should be thinking in exactly opposite terms of us adapting to nature's needs. And she was citing a recent project by the Montreal Chamber of Commerce to modify or to move the port of Quebec to have better commerce, and that the new proposed location of the port of Montreal would really severely impact a specifically Canadian species of fish. And so it's an example of how we are willing to sacrifice natural species and different ecosystems for the benefits of our trade and profits and commerce. And so that one of the solutions to this issue presented in the film that's really important is the destruction of the dams, the undamming of rivers that kind of marks a return to this relationship where we are adapting to nature's needs, which also benefits us in turn.
Peut-être juste compléter en disant qu'à Greenpeace Canada, on a présentement donc une campagne où on invite les gens à diminuer leur consommation de viande parce qu'au niveau mondial, on voit que la consommation de viande industrielle a des impacts très importants. On a vu un rapport qui est sorti cet été, au mois d'août, sur l'utilisation des sols à travers le monde et très relié avec l'élevage industriel et la production de plantes pour nourrir en fait les vaches qui vont à la consommation humaine. Donc c'est ça. Alors c'est une campagne où ce qu'on invite les gens à modifier leur mode de vie pour mieux justement s'arrimer avec ce lien-là qu'on a avec la Terre puis auquel il faut qu'on revienne. Voilà.
So she was mentioning a campaign currently being put on by Greenpeace to encourage people to decrease their consumption of meat because as a way to kind of reverse this relationship and modify our lifestyles to better recreate this relationship with nature, because there is kind of at every step of the way soils are impacted and the food that is fed to animals that are then used to feed us, and thinking of how we can sort of reverse this relationship.
Puis je vais juste finir en revenant à la question du saumon. En fait, à Vigilance OGM, ce qu'on demande, c'est notamment l'étiquetage obligatoire des saumons OGM, la transparence aussi par rapport aux activités OGM qui se font, puis aux entreprises et tout ça. Puis aussi, en fait, la consultation sur les projets, notamment la consultation des Premières Nations, mais aussi du public en général pour qu'ils soient informés en quoi consistent ces projets-là.
And at Vigilance OGM, one of the main goals and kind of the campaigns is also linked to the labeling of GMO salmons and just kind of fighting or working towards more accountability and transparency, and also more consultations with First Nations in all of these processes, as well as with the public.
Let's open up for questions and see if there's anyone.
I would agree partially with you and agree with my colleague that we need to relook at what we're eating and how we're eating, how we're producing as well. And this is from a professor in the animal science department and the agricultural faculty, okay? So I think we need to really rationally look at these things. But the reality is, when you take a step back and you look at population growth, where it's going to be happening, also where the expansion of wealth is going on, which is in China, which is in India, the projections are that meat consumption in those countries will double in the next 40 years, 30 years. And that's a little bit out of our hands, unfortunately. So I would agree with that. A lot of my colleagues in the Faculty of Agriculture work in milk production, and that's a big issue as well. It's a luxury item. As animals, we're the only weaned stage of our lives that really consumes milk in the way that we do. So, and the dairy industry is very powerful in Quebec and in Canada. Those are tough questions. If we start looking at reducing those, what's the impact in regions that are very strong in producing dairy right now? Again, it comes down to a societal question, but I do agree that wherever we can, if we can limit our consumption of meat, that's gonna help to a very large extent the problem in this part of the world, anyways. Again, I'm not a fisheries biologist, but I mean, I think it's a bit on a case-by-case basis. If you look at the cod fishery, right, in 1993, it was banned in eastern Canada. And the idea was that we'll stop fishing cod and they'll come back. Well, they haven't. And part of that is because of climate change. Because of the change in temperature, these fish are very sensitive to changes in temperature, particularly during reproduction. And this is a problem. But also, so we've stopped fishing cod, but there's a 200-mile limit, and not everybody has stopped fishing cod. So, you know, there's a political issue as well that comes into play, and the fisheries industry is complicated. You know, we saw in the film here they came down very hard on aquaculture. I work in the aquaculture industry, trying to help them come out with ways to produce better. We've been very successful on a number of fronts. And I agree that the industry has maybe not done its best in all cases. It's a very young industry, though, and it's shown itself able to adapt. The fishing industry is the only industry based on hunting still, supplying significant amount of protein to the human population. And we have probably 75% of the fisheries around the world are currently overexploited, and we just haven't learned. What happens is we deplete one species, and we do what's called fishing down the evolutionary ladder. We take a lesser valued fish and start exploiting it, and so on and so on, until there's pretty much nothing left. It's shocking, to be completely frank. So, you know, I understand that there's some issues with the aquaculture industry. We're promoting, and I should say in Quebec it's very different. Net pens are not allowed in Quebec. They never has been. It's all land-based production. They have their own issues, but that is not an issue in this province. But the fishing industry, I think it has to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and I don't know how it will change, but something needs to happen.
En fait, juste sur la question de l'industrie de la pêche qui est en train de vider nos océans, donc il y a énormément de gaspillage qui se fait des ressources des océans, mais des ressources en général sur la Terre. Les chiffres que j'ai vus dernièrement, on dit qu'un aliment sur 7 est gaspillé, donc c'est énorme. Alors, voilà.
Yeah, just on the question of the fishing industry and its impact on the oceans, there's also the question of waste, because today numbers are that 1 food item out of 7 ends up being wasted.
So I've worked with these people who are producing the OGM salmon, Aqua Bounty. I know very well the person who invented it. He's an emeritus professor at Memorial and was doing a very fundamental study on antifreeze proteins and kind of tripped over this. And then some business people ran off, took it and ran with it. I think, you know, my opinion of this, I'm a big fan of technology in general. I'm a big technology when it comes to food technology. I'm a bit of a geek in that. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Unfortunately, I feel strongly that a lot of the opportunities have been hijacked for different reasons. I hope that that's going to change. Certainly, when it comes to genetically modified crops, there's an awful lot of work being done for good traits, not just Roundup resistance, which has its benefits, by the way. I should say, I'm a professor, but I'm also a farmer. I still run our family farm in Southern Ontario. So I'm exposed to some of these issues a lot more over the past 10 years. Regarding the genetically modified fish, you know, they're overexpressing growth hormone that makes them grow faster. It's as simple as that. And these fish are viable. So the idea of them escaping and interbreeding with natural populations is possible. Now, they are sterile by a method that causes about 99.9% to be unviable, but there's always a chance of, you know, 1 in 1,000 that could be viable and might escape. They are currently being raised in biosecure recirculating systems where none of the fish would be able to get out. With multiple approaches to prevent that. The concern is that this is the thin edge of the wedge, and that eventually these fish may be allowed at some point to be raised in net pens. And I think that's a bad idea. Land-based secure systems are not like net pens. There's multiple approaches to control any escapes, and the risk is essentially zero. But the concern is that. Now, I think one of the issues about labeling is a real one, and you know, it's a tough one as well. The company's following the rules, and if we want the rules to be different, well, that's on us to try and pressure the politicians that make up the rules. Certainly, I think I like to know what I'm eating. And I think that mandatory labeling should be the case. And I think it's just common sense. That said, this fish has probably been the longest and most intensively studied application of genetic modification. The first animal, it's always a big step, and it's complicated.
Yeah.
Ouais, ben, je suis contente que le film vous ait frappé autant, puis que ça éveille un peu le besoin de se renseigner plus aussi sur toutes ces questions-là. Moi aussi, quand je vois le poisson se faire tuer comme ça pour, par exemple, prendre la semence, j'ai le sentiment qu'on est en train de briser le cycle du vivant. Donc, je ne suis pas contre la technologie, je ne suis pas pro-technologie non plus. Je pense qu'il y a des technologies qui peuvent être intéressantes, mais je pense qu'il y en a certaines, des fois, où on va trop loin, puis où on ne respecte pas, en fait, le vivant. Puis moi, ce que je mange aussi, j'ai envie que ce soit quelque chose qui a été respecté dans la mesure du possible, c'est sûr que... Mais qu'il n'y a pas eu cette... en tout cas, ce choc-là.
Sorry. So, first of all, she says that she's really glad that the film impacted you in such a way and kind of sparked a desire to get more awareness and more information, and that so Marie-Josée also thinks that, well, she's not for or against technology and thinks that technology can have very interesting impacts, but there's also the same reaction when she sees fish getting killed and also extracting the eggs. Just that feeling that what we eat should come from an animal or something that was treated with respect as much as possible. And these images in the film are just sort of a breaking of that link.
Puis aussi, par rapport aux technologies, dernièrement, j'écoutais un reportage sur des fermiers en Europe, en France, en fait, qui sont en train de transformer leurs méthodes pour réapprendre des méthodes ancestrales, notamment utiliser différentes cultures sur une parcelle pour varier, pour nourrir la terre, mais aussi pour enrayer l'érosion. Donc, ils se sont associés à des chercheurs, en fait, des agriculteurs avec des chercheurs pour réapprendre des savoirs ancestraux puis pour faire des tests. Donc, par rapport à la terre, qu'est-ce que ça l'apportait et tout. Donc, je pense que la technologie peut être intéressante, puis que je vois aussi que des fois, il faut revenir à ces anciennes technologies-là qu'on avait appris, ces anciens modèles qui vont plus respecter, en fait, comme la personne qui expliquait ça disait, les animaux qui vont aller paître sur ce champ-là, c'est un champ qui est naturel, qui est beaucoup plus naturel qu'une monoculture. Alors, l'animal va être plus en santé. Il y a différents aspects à ça. Non seulement le sol va être meilleur, mais aussi l'animal. Donc c'est ça. Donc, ce genre de technologie-là est intéressante. Puis, pour revenir à la question sur les OGM, quand on voit dans le film, non, on ne parle pas nécessairement d'OGM, mais on voit les éclosions, comment on appelle ça en français, je ne sais plus, hatchery, c'est les écloseries de poissons qui sont percées et qu'il va y avoir migration, qui vont se mêler avec les poissons natifs, avec les poissons indigènes. Donc, on voit clairement des impacts que ça a et qui sont aussi dangereux dans le cas de poissons OGM. Alors, je pense qu'il faut vraiment se renseigner, nous, en tant que consommateurs, sur qu'est-ce qu'on mange. Puis pour ça, il faut avoir les moyens de se renseigner, c'est-à-dire que la plupart du temps, c'est pas étiqueté, en fait. On n'est pas consulté, on n'est pas renseigné sur les produits. Donc, voilà.
Yeah, just going to translate really quickly before wrapping up, but basically Marie-Josée was watching a documentary about also farmers in Europe and specifically in France who were who were going back to more ancestral ways of farming the land, and especially going against the single crop fields and kind of incorporating multiple different crops on the same farm, and then that is developing a healthier relationship for the soil and the animals and the crops, and just overall creating a more balanced ecosystem. And then to go back to the question of the GMO salmon, it's not addressed in the film as much, but they do show the impacts of, for example, the nets in the fish farms breaking, and then fish kind of going into the ocean and reproducing or mixing with the native species of salmon in the ocean, and the really disastrous impacts that can have, and that these impacts would also be the same with GMO salmon, and the impact of GMO salmon on different native species of salmon, and so that as consumers we can try to inform ourselves better, but it's also a question of having the means to inform yourself, which is not always easy.
All right, well, thank you so much for our guests tonight and for all the information and for translation. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks. Thank you.